Good morning and welcome to Our Issues Milwaukee. I'm your host, Andrea Williams. Our focus this morning is on an organization that works with companies across southeastern Wisconsin to help grow and advance the workforce through recruitment, training, and human services. That organization is Employ Milwaukee, and here to tell us more about it is Willie Wade, who is the Vice President of Community Relations. How are you, Willie?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing well. Always good to see you.
Likewise.
And it's so weird to have you here under a different title and position, but we'll talk about that in just a little bit.
Okay.
So we do have a lot to discuss this morning, but I do want to really start off finding out more about Employ Milwaukee. It's formerly known as the Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board. When exactly did that name change happen?
The name change happened probably around the beginning of the year. We changed the name for several reasons, but one of the main reasons why we changed it because no one knew what Milwaukee Area Workforce Investment Board was. Okay. It was too long, it's hard to market and promote that. So we boiled it down to exactly what it is that we do, and what it is that we do is Employ Milwaukee. Okay. So we changed the name.
All right, and so you've made it clear that that's what you do is find jobs for people who are in need of work. So what else is it that you offer in doing that?
Well, we're the only federally mandated agency to do coordination of workforce for southeastern Wisconsin. There's 11 workforce boards throughout the state of Wisconsin, of course, Milwaukee being the biggest one, that handles different regions of the state and deal with workforce concerns as far as demand and supply. So what we do as an agency, we partner with a lot of other agencies. We give funding to those agencies, and they help us with training, recruitment, and wraparound services in order to help individuals be prepared for the workforce. And we also work with, on the demand side, companies and businesses that are looking for qualified workers in order to stabilize their business, to expand their business. And we also want the workforce to be in a situation where when we're going out into the United States and around the world, that we can recruit companies to our area because we have a workforce that is prepared and ready to work.
All right, so it's safe to say you kind of work as the middleman between those people who are looking for jobs and those people who are looking to employ people who are skilled to handle those jobs.
Exactly, and we get federal funds and other funding resources to do just that, to coordinate between the demand and supply side of workforce.
Okay, there are a number of programs and services that are set up to provide resources as well as support to assist individuals who are looking to obtain permanent employment. So we'll talk about a few of those. You have what's called WIOA Adult, which is set up to assist residents in getting the training and education necessary for careers, because what happens is, you know, people want to work, but they don't necessarily have the skills that they need in order to take on certain jobs.
And that's exactly right. And what we do at Employ Milwaukee, we have what is called an industry advisory board. Okay. And we have industry advisory board for 5 different industries. And what it is the experts in those industries sit on boards and they tell us exactly what it is they need, what type of workers, what skills they need. And then we go out to our partners and give them that information, and they provide the training for those individuals in hopes of getting them prepared to meet the demand of the workforce. So that's exactly what we do.
Okay, so if somebody's interested in taking advantage of some of the programs that you do offer, do they just show up and say, hey, I want to be a part of this? What steps do they follow?
Well, they could just show up to our site physically, and we could grab them there at the counter, and we'll meet them where they are and take them through whatever steps we need to take them to. We'll do a intake form, and we use a common intake form with a lot of our partners. So some of the information that we're gathering, we need to be able to see what other programs or what other services they may be able to receive based on what they put down on the intake form. That's one way. The other way, which is the way that I would recommend, is that you could go to employmilwaukee.org, which is our webpage, and you can go there, and it's very easy, user-friendly, and it can tell you exactly what you need to do, either by your age or by what industry you're interested in. And if you're a business, we have links on there for businesses to tell them how they can engage with Employ Milwaukee as far as receiving some of the services that they may need.
Yeah, it's all good stuff, and there's probably somebody at home right now and saying, hey, I had no idea that all of that even existed, and that, my friend, is why you are here today. We talk about this concept of there being a lot of jobs that are available out there, but there's actually a large percentage of people who don't have the skills needed for those jobs. We mentioned that just a little bit ago, and recently I had Lieutenant Governor Rebecca Clayfish here. And she chairs the governor's task force on minority employment, and she mentioned that there are literally thousands of jobs that are available. But the problem and the challenge is that there's a skills gap, and this is something that you guys are dealing with every single day?
Correct, and she's right, and the skill gap is very important. It's a real issue, and that's why we partner with a lot of other associations and organizations and nonprofits to try to make sure that we can start building the skills that's needed in order to close the gap on the skills, close the skills gap throughout the state. Now, for her, the number that she gave was probably a statewide number, and of course, when you look at the population of the state, a lot of that percentage probably is inside Milwaukee and Milwaukee County.
Okay, and since I brought up that interview, I want to give the viewers at home a chance to revisit exactly what she had to say.
This is a statewide issue. This is not just a Milwaukee issue, and so it's important that we develop statewide solutions. But uniquely, Milwaukee has a lot of leaders in this area, and so we've identified a number of challenges, a number of barriers in order to get folks who are in our minority communities to family-sustaining wage work. Things like transportation and child care, things like entrepreneurship, even things like having a criminal record, things like homelessness. All of these things can contribute to hurdles that people have to jump over or find a way around in order to get to family-sustaining wage opportunities. And everybody deserves one of those. And the fact of the matter in Wisconsin today is everybody can have one of those. If you go to our totally free Department of Workforce Development job search website, it's called jobcenterofwisconsin.com, you can see that there are about 90,000 open jobs available on that site at any given day. Right. So when you say wow, you kind of wonder, well, gosh, you know, all those open jobs, what do they represent? And why aren't people taking these jobs? Well, here's kind of the conundrum we're in. It's a paradox, if you will, because we have all these open opportunities, and yet we still have people who are seeking work. And the average person says, well, how come all these job seekers don't just go over here to all these employers and just take all those jobs?
Yeah.
There, boom, one day you've got all those folks hired and all of those job opportunities filled. This group doesn't necessarily have the skill sets that this group is looking for. The kind of space in between is called the skills gap. It's something that we're kind of building a bridge over right now through a variety of different solutions and programs, most of which have to do with education, either your science and technology, your English skills, or even your soft skills, your employability skills, which we've also identified as a bit of a barrier to get folks into the workforce. Because today's challenge is completely the opposite of yesterday's challenge. Because remember what the recession did to us. In the recession, we had all these people seeking jobs and not enough job opportunities for all of the job seekers. Well, today we have kind of a reversal of fortunes. So how do we get people prepared and ready to take the jobs that already exist? Through a number of our programs. We have our W-2 program, and we have our job centers. We have a number of not-for-profits that we partner with. Even in our corrections department, I was the executive sponsor of a grant for the Council on State Governance to get the type of research done here in Wisconsin to help both identify ways to reduce recidivism, recommitting crimes, to get you back into our corrections department, and increase work skills at the same time so that folks, when they are returning to the community from which they came, because 97% of folks who are in our corrections department will return to the communities from which they came, to get them the skills to not have idle time and not have idle hands, but instead be engaged people who can be a part of society.
All right, so all super important stuff. So what are your thoughts after you hear that soundbite?
She's batting 1,000. The lieutenant governor is telling it exactly like it is. I couldn't dispute anything she said. She's right on. But that's why the federal government and the state government are working hard with organizations like myself throughout the state to make sure that we do what's necessary, because it's very important to the state's economy that we have a vital workforce, because workforce bring in businesses bring in taxes, businesses bring in employees who spend money in our society on recreation, on goods and services. So it's very important that workforce is coordinated properly so we can take advantage of that.
It all makes sense. And with everything that we've talked about thus far, you have this program called Milwaukee Builds that takes an individual with no previous work experience and you actually are able to make them employable.
Yes, we do.
How do you do that?
Well, first of all, once again, we meet them where they are. We find out what other needs they may have. If they have some needs as far as driver's license, if they have some issues with drug dependency, if they have daycare issues, if they have transportation issues, literacy issues, we can get them to the proper organizations that can start training them and finding out if they're interested in different job sectors. And then once we find out the one that they're interested in, we can start getting them the type of training they need to engage in that sector and become, it could be an inlet to them getting a career, not just a job. We want them to get career skills. So if it's in transportation, if it's in hospitality, if it's in manufacturing and construction, we work on the front end to get them the basic skills that allows them to go and get certificates and get other credentials, maybe go to MATC, maybe get into the apprenticeship program to get them on their way to having a work career that can take care of themselves and their family.
Yeah, and statistics actually show that a certain percentage of individuals who are in the prison system right now will go back, and she mentioned that as well. So you have what's called re-entry that works directly with the Wisconsin Department of Corrections. Tell us more about that.
Well, we actually have a physical job center out at the House of Corrections that we start working with individuals who we know are going to be returning to a society. So these are returning citizens. They may be coming back in the next 6 months. So some of those, we can get some of those Milwaukee Build skills to get them some opportunity with some employers, and we could use the time that they have for Huber Law, where they come in, they work, and then they go back and they do that time. And in about 6 months when they're getting out, they already had the work experience, they already had a relationship, they already had the training. And with that, we hope that they can get some of the support from their families, and then they will get out of the prison system, return to society, and already have a job, and that way that would deter them returning back to a life of crime. So that's a very, very important entry point for the workforce.
Yeah, and we'll discuss more of your programs in just a little bit, but I wanted to point out that you spent 13 years as the 7th District Alderman in Milwaukee. I was interested in how that experience as a politician working with the Common Council has been able to kind of work its way over to what it is you do now.
Well, it probably was the main reason why I decided to make this change, because I was doing things legislatively, putting laws and legislation in place that that dealt with workforce and residency preference and inclusion from the community. And in doing that and looking at all of the projects that were coming along in Milwaukee, a lot of development projects and a lot of infrastructure improvement projects, what I realized that the general public did not have the skills that were necessary to take these jobs. Now, a lot of these jobs are well-paying jobs. They don't take a college degree. They just take the proper training and time on the job in order to be able to get those jobs. So I said, well, you know, I've done enough on this side. Now the job market has opened up to a point where we have an influx of jobs, and I wanted to go over, and human services is one of my passions. I wanted to go over and see what I could do as far as on the workforce side.
And you've been known to say that one of the biggest crises that Milwaukee faces is unemployment. And so I'm interested in knowing your thoughts because when we look at unemployment and all of the issues that we talk about every week on this show, it all goes hand in hand. So this past summer, Milwaukee made national headlines, of course, when riots broke out in the Sherman Park neighborhood. And that, like I just mentioned, is your former district. Before it was taken over by Khalif Rainey, who you actually endorsed.
Yes.
So you had to have some major feelings in sitting back and watching all of this unfold. And this is something that you dealt with this whole community for 13 years.
Right.
What were your thoughts? What was going through your mind?
Right. It was very troubling. I would, not to be defensive, but I would say riot is probably a mischaracterization of what happened. Because if you saw, nobody was physically hitting anybody or harming anybody, but it definitely was unrest in the community. There are several businesses set on fire. There are people out in the streets and police out in the streets having standoffs. So, no one wants to see that anywhere, especially in their own backyard. And I live in Sherman Park. So from that standpoint, it was very disturbing. But it was one of those things where if you know Milwaukee and you said, okay, where would a situation like that occur in Milwaukee? Sherman Park would probably be the last place that you would think, because Sherman Park is really an affluent community. Some of the
very
highest
diverse.
Some of the highest tax base that we have in the city. Very nice properties. So you would think that it wouldn't occur in Sherman Park, but the people that you saw involved in that weren't necessarily Sherman Park residents. It just happened that all of this stemmed from a business
that happened
right
in
there
that
near Sherman Park.
Yeah.
So everybody think that that's Sherman Park, but it's not. But that gave us an idea from the state level, the federal level, and the city level that, you know what, we may need to laser focus on workforce and jobs and opportunity, because a lot of that what we saw was people just acting out of frustration of not getting the opportunities that they need to live the quality of life that they deserve to live.
Yeah, and it's interesting, everything that you just said about Sherman Park. The mayor was here to talk about the unrest, and he said the same thing. Matter of fact, he grew up in the Sherman Park neighborhood as well. And then Alderman Rainey was here, and I think it's been made clear that the people who live in that neighborhood were not involved with what was going on. But the sad part is that they had to live with the aftermath of all the things that took place. So what I wanted to talk about with you quickly is the governor's office. As a result of that unrest, he announced an investment of $4.5 million to actually strengthen and rebuild Milwaukee in partnership with the city, the county, and community groups that include Employ Milwaukee. So if you would, I want you to just stay there, and we'll continue this conversation right after the break.
Okay.
Appreciate that. We're going to take this quick break, and when we return, we'll continue our focus on Employ Milwaukee. We'll discuss that investment of $4.5 million, and we'll also focus on Mayor Tom Barrett, who has some specific programs set up for young people. We'll discuss that and a whole lot more right after this.